Hey guys, we're back updating the Power Rankings for the Amazing Race 38 following episode 8, which was a non-elimination episode. So much for that. And while I was expecting there to be at least one, considering that last season also had a non-elimination, there's still not something I'm a huge fan of, as it obviously does prolong the season a little bit, but here we are. But with that out of the way, we have 16 to talk about, and so more time, let's go into the video. So starting off at number 6, the team that I believe is at least likely to win from this point on is still Chelsea and Jack, who, once again, are a pretty mediocre team where they end up coming in second to last. And actually spent a decent amount of the leg in last place, where they were last place going to the roadblock. They were also last place coming out of the detour. You also see them struggling once again with navigation, where they said at the beginning of the episode that they were going to work on that, only for them to not do so, which seemed more like Dodo content there. And just in general, they're a team that I feel like it's the least impressive from a race perspective, where they never really had like that strong of a leg, mixing in the fact that they did pretty poorly on this leg. Also the fact that they're just not that big of a focus in the edit, where if anything, they're getting kind of dunked on with them like being bad navigation. So it's for that reason that I still have them at the very bottom, even though they were not last place on this leg, to where they're here at number 6. Now moving on to number 5, and I did deliberate a little bit on this placement. However, after thinking about it, I did decide to go with Kylan and Taylor here at number 5 here. And Cal and Taylor don't do that poorly on this leg, where they come into the leg in 4th place. They come out of it in 3rd place, really spend the bulk of the leg in 3rd place, not really gaining or losing any placement. And they also end up using their express pass here on the detour, largely because they have to. Though with that said, the way things were broken down at that point, it didn't make that much of a difference there. They weren't really able to gain much ground through their use of the express pass. But even so, I still found their performance here to be mostly fine. Though with that said, I don't know, I feel like edit-wise, they haven't gone that strong of an edit more recently. I feel like they haven't gotten too much content. And yes, while they seem to be a pretty competent team on paper, I feel like they're not really being meant to be this massive rooting interest for the audience. So it's for that reason that despite them doing all right on this leg, I did decide to bump them down here to number 5. And moving on to number 4, and this is the team that I was debating between Kylan and Taylor for this spot. But at number 4, I did decide to go with Joseph and Adam here, who do end up coming in last place on this leg, only to be saved by a non-elim. And obviously that's going to be a knock against them when I get around to my team ranking at the end of the season. And they're obviously still not in that great of a spot to where they're obviously going to be last place coming to the next leg. Phil also mentioned there will be some sort of penalty involved. So they definitely have their work cut out for them, and that was at least a consideration for their placement on this list. However, I feel like they've been getting a stronger edit more recently compared to Kylan and Taylor, where they obviously got a lot of sympathetic content in this latest episode, and while it was circumstantial, where Adam gets tired in the detour due to him being low on blood sugar, and then obviously having a pretty emotional reaction upon being saved by the non-elim, I still think on the whole, they definitely stand out a bit more from an edit standpoint, and I feel like we're meant to be rooting for them more so than Kylan and Taylor. So despite them being in this pretty rough spot right now, I feel like if they're able to recover on the next leg, that I would have more confidence in them to win the race compared to Kylan and Taylor. But as things currently stand, I can't have them too much higher than number 4 here. Now moving on to number 3, and this is the same top 3 as last week, and number 3 had the same team as last week, and that is Izzy and Paige. And Izzy and Paige had a pretty fine leg here, all things considered, where they came into the leg in last place, but despite that, they're able to make up some ground, where they were actually 3rd place coming out of the roadblock. They also do pretty well in the detour, with it being pretty perfectly designed for Izzy, considering she is a professional flutist, and they do finish the leg in 4th place. So again, I feel like they did make up some decent ground across this leg here, and I still feel like they're one of the more prominent teams in the edit, for me at least, to where they got pretty decent content during the detour, where we saw Izzy teaching Paige how to play the flute. So again, I feel like there's some pretty good stuff there. I feel like they're still a team that I would expect to do better than what their placements indicate. But still, I feel like the top 2 teams are pretty obvious to me, to where they're here at number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and this is the same top 2 as last week, and I feel like there's once again a debate over the actual placements here, but at number 2, I did decide to make a change yet again. So at number 2, we do have Tucker and Eric, and it's not necessarily because of their placement on this leg, where they do ultimately finish in 2nd place, in a position to where it was this back and forth between Jack and Jazz and them, where they're going back and forth for 1st place during various points in the leg, only for them to come up short by the end of it. And honestly, the fact that they were so competitive with Jack and Jazz, despite them using their express pass there, is pretty impressive in my eyes. And I do have a lot of confidence in Tucker and Eric moving forward. Even beyond that, they also talk quite a bit about how they know that they're seen as threats, and how they see Jack and Jazz as their biggest competition, and how they have a great relationship. I still feel pretty good about Tucker and Eric after this last episode. Though with that said, I feel like it was a slightly better episode for the number 1 team, so while I still feel pretty good about Tucker and Eric as contenders to win the season, I did decide to leave them behind for number 2, at least for this week. And now at number 1, the team that I believe is the most likely to win the Amazing Race 38 at this point is Jaggin Jazz. Now, it's not necessarily because they won this leg that they're here at number 1, where, if anything, the fact that they used their Express Pass and still barely won the leg is at least a knock against them, where the fact that they used their Express Pass, but yet Tucker and Eric were still side by side beside them, makes me a bit uneasy about how dominant of a race they're running, and the fact that they will have like this serious competition ahead of them in terms of them actually winning the race. But even so, they did win the leg, so I feel like I had to at least factor that in. But I think the bigger thing is that I feel like they got pretty strong content this episode where they talked a lot about their relationship, how like their parents are hard workers and how their goal is to win the race so that they can retire their parents. So I feel like that was strong personal content for them. And I feel like that was probably the thing that pushed them over the edge for me, even though I feel like right now it's pretty close between the two of them. And I could see it's going back and forth between them in the legs to come as we head to this end game. But for me, it's the fact that they won this leg. Also, the fact that they got this personal content on top of that was enough to have them at least above Tucker and Eric for this week to where they're here at number 1. And there we go. That'll do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe like it has with the channel. Now I'll be back again next week to update the Power Rankings again, so be on the lookout for that. I'm covering Survivor 489 and Hell's Kitchen, so if you want videos on those shows, be on the lookout for that. I'm on Patreon and have a YouTube membership if you want to consider supporting the channel. You can do so by clicking the link in the description, and you can also join the Discord server by also clicking the link in the description. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, but for now, that is the video. See ya!